Representative, great to have you with us.
Good to be with you this morning, John.
And we want to thank you for coming to Virginia and to Richmond to help out our good friend Dave Bratt.
Yeah, he's a good man. He's the kind of guy you'd like to have working with you in Congress, believes in the values and principles that made our country special in the first place. So Dave's a good friend, and he's doing a great job for the folks here in the Richmond area.
He's the real deal. Congressman, I want to start just if you could share with our audience what exactly is the agenda of the Freedom Caucus within the GOP?
Real simple, to stand up for all those people around this country who think Washington's completely forgotten them. I mean, you talk to just about any family out there, they say, oh, Washington's all about the connected classes, the corporate cronyism, and all that baloney that goes on, and regular families want us to go there and fight for them. And our job is to be a conservative group, yes, but one that is doing things that are going to help just regular families across this country. For example, the tax code. Everyone knows the tax code is ridiculous. It needs to be thrown out, start all over, put in place a tax code that's fair, that's simple, that's easy to figure out, not all this complex baloney we have today. Things like reform the welfare system. Say we're going to stop all the corporate welfare. We're tired of giving working-class families money to favored corporations, and also require those on the other end, in the social safety net system, require a work component if you're going to get taxpayer money. Things like that, just common sense things that we can all agree need to be done. I'm convinced this last election, a lot of voters stayed home, but those who went said, we know the Democrats have forgotten this, but we think maybe, just maybe, Republicans might know who we are, and maybe they will actually do something for us. And so we're going to give them one more chance. And so it's our job to remember that and actually get it done.
To this Iranian deal, the Democrats now and the Obama administration very upset over the letter sent to Iran signed by just under 50 Republican senators. What's the deal here?
Well, I mean, the deal is last week we had an amazing speech given by the Prime Minister of Israel,
right,
where I think he laid it out very clearly, how serious this threat is, how dangerous Iran is, and how I think the Prime Minister's words were a bad deal is, no deal is better than a bad deal, but let's keep working for a good deal. And so I think that's the focus of what the senators are trying to do, is say, hey, we don't want the president just getting any old deal. We want it to be good for America, good for our best friend Israel. We want that kind of action, and that's why you see the Senate step up. I think it makes sense for more people to be involved in this. We've actually seen some things that have happened in foreign policy with this administration that I think cause us all a great deal of concern, and that's why you're seeing the Senate weigh in on this, which I think is entirely appropriate.
Congressman, what about one piece of the document that says to Iran, it says, look, a bad deal is not in your best interest, because if we get a Republican president in 2016, this entire thing is going to get scrapped, right?
Yep. Look, Iran, everyone in the world knows that Iran should not get nuclear capability. It should not happen. You can't have a nuclear Iran. The things they've said, the way they have operated, the mullahs have operated their country, that cannot happen. And so that's why you have to have an agreement that says you got to stop. Not that you can keep doing it, that seems to be where this White House is headed, but you have to stop. Ramp up the sanctions. Don't sign any agreement that lets them continue. Make sure we can check and evaluate everything that's going on there. That's what needs to happen when you think about just how serious this is. That's what has to happen. And our folks get it, and the fact that our Senate is letting them know that, I think, again, as I said, makes a great deal of sense.
Congressman, I want to get to the debt. The Obama budget, which he submitted, now the CBO is saying that it's going to grow the debt another $500 billion, and now they're estimating that our total debt will be over $18 trillion. We have $127 trillion, Congressman, of unfunded liabilities with no way to pay these in sight. Why isn't anybody talking about this? Well,
we are. A few years ago, we put together the plan called Cut, Cap, and Balance, which we thought made complete sense. It said let's reduce some spending now. Let's cap spending as a percentage of our economic growth, as a percentage of our entire economy, which makes sense. That's conducive to economic growth. And then let's start the path to get a balanced budget amendment to the United States Constitution. Again, common sense. It was actually CNN did a poll. 67% of the American people said, "Yeah, that makes complete sense." Now, unfortunately, Harry Reid. The bill actually passed the House. Harry Reid didn't even debate it, let alone vote on it and pass it. Just threw it in the trash can. Two things have to happen. One, you have to curtail spending. You don't have to slash it, but you got to curtail spending. You got to hold down spending, particularly in the non-defense areas, so that you can actually increase spending in defense, which is, after all, what the Constitution says we're supposed to spend your tax dollars on. Right. And then you have to have economic growth. This 2.3% growth rate we've been experiencing, kind of bumping along. We should be humming along at 3-4%. I always go by comparison, and our friends on the left don't like this, but we conservatives harken back to the days of Reagan because they were good days, for goodness sake. And in the fifth year of Reagan's 8 years in office, in the fifth year, the economic growth rate, guess what it was, John?
What?
7.5%. Now, if you're growing that economy growing at 7.5%, it gets so much easier, not easy, but easier to solve some of our long-term problems with long-term obligations with Social Security and Medicare. You got to have economic growth, but instead, what we have from this administration is a new rule and a new requirement and a new regulation every stinking day from the EPA, from OSHA, from all these various agencies that hinder economic growth. We hear it all the time from business. I'm sure you've heard the same thing. Mm-hmm. They'll say, in spite of all the stupid things you're doing in Washington, Jordan, we're still creating some jobs. But we could do a lot better if you guys wouldn't put such a burden on it. Mm-hmm. That's what has to happen so that we can get economic growth, hold the line on spending, grow the economy, and then you can start to pay down this debt, get a balanced budget each year, and then start paying down this debt.
Obama's illegal amnesty, the Republican leadership really did nothing to stop it. They couldn't stop it in the U.S. Senate. Can anybody stop Obama?
Well, yeah, the American people are going to stop it. I think we're going to elect someone. My hope is we're going to elect a Republican in 2 years. Now, we still have to deal with Obama, so two things we got to do. The powers that the legislative branch have are the power of the purse, and you're right. Unfortunately, we weren't able to prevail on that last week. But we also have the power of oversight, and we have been able to slow this guy down and stop some things simply by having hearings, drawing attention to all the goofy things they're doing. Mm-hmm. You can talk about the hearing. Here's a great example. Obamacare passes. They had the 1099 provision, and that was going to be a huge burden to small business owners across this country. We drew attention to it. We talked about it, and even Obama and the Democrats, in their signature piece of legislation, said, "Yeah, this is stupid." Mm-hmm. So that was changed. So there are some things where, by drawing attention, having the oversight function, the oversight hearings that we're supposed to have, when you do that, you can slow them down and stop. So we have to focus on the oversight function. We're doing that now. The ATF is looking to ban a certain type of ammunition. It makes absolutely no sense that to just unilaterally change the rule. We're going to have hearings on that. I think we can get that stopped. So there's some things we can do that actually are pro-freedom that you do through the oversight and highlighting their actions in committee hearings and other work that we do. So those two functions we got to use. And mm-hmm. Look, we got a number of appropriations process coming up. We got the debt ceiling issue coming up. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to be able to use the power of the purse to curtail some of the other things he's doing on the spending side.
Hillary Clinton emails the fact that as Secretary of State, she went off her own private server at her farm in upstate New York rather than go through the government email system that everybody else has to comply with. What do you make of this whole thing, Congressman?
One of the hallmarks of our great country is you have to have a transparent government if you're really going to have true liberty and true freedom. And so the fact that we didn't have that in this situation, you have a high-ranking government official who is, at least by appearances, doing things that are designed to make sure that it's not transparent, that's a problem. And look, I sit on the Benghazi Select Committee. We've had a subpoena at the State Department for a year and a half. We've met several times with the State Department. They never once told us she didn't have an email account at the State Department, that she was operating totally off private accounts. In all the meetings and all the hearings we've had with the State Department, they never once told us that. We learned when we finally get some of the emails that show, wait a minute, this is a different email address. So look, we're gonna dig into this. The simple thing that has to happen is an independent observer has to get this information, has to get her server, and determine what's private, what's public, and then the public stuff they got to turn over to us, and so we can see everything that went on, and particularly from our committee's perspective, what went on relative to the tragedy that took place in Benghazi on 9/11 3 years ago now.
Congressman Jordan, it's really frustrating for the average citizen out there to look at this Benghazi investigation as it's gone down and say to yourself, well, let's see, Darrell Issa spent all this time and we had so many people come in and we didn't, the State Department never told the Congressional Oversight Committee that her emails were coming from a different server. Is that unfathomable?
Yeah, particularly when we've had, as recent as 2 months ago, we had the State Department on the witness stand in one of our select committees talking to them about the fact we've had a subpoena out for a year and a half and we want all the documents, and never once in that hearing did they talk about, well, you know, we got to get them from Hillary first because she didn't use a government account.
Right.
I mean, you got to be kidding me. And again, you would think, John, we had 4 Americans. We had the ambassador, we had Sean Smith, Tyrone Woods, and Glenn Doherty lose their lives, give their lives for their country on that day. You would think the executive branch of the government wants to get to the truth just as bad as the legislative branch, just as much as the American taxpayer and our fellow citizens want to know the truth, and more importantly, the families of those 4 individuals want to know the truth. Mm-hmm. You would think, instead of dragging their feet, instead of not telling us pertinent information, important information, instead of not giving us the document, they'd want to help because 4 Americans gave their lives. But instead, all we get from this administration is slow walking, dragging their feet, putting up every obstacle and hurdle and block they can, keeping us from getting to the information that that'll help us get the answers. And it is frustrating, and I've seen it. I've been involved with the IRS issue. I've seen it with the IRS. We see it with the State Department in the Benghazi situation, and it's just par for the course for these guys. And it is beyond frustrating for the American people I know.
Well, they're just allowed to make a mockery of the entire system. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
All right, we're almost out of time. I got one more minute. We're with Congressman Jim Jordan, Republican of Ohio. He's also the chairman of the Freedom Caucus. Final question, Congressman. You're in Richmond today for a fundraiser, Breakfast with Dave Bratt. Thanks for being in Richmond. What inspired this trip?
Dave and I just hit it off. We're about the same age. I think we actually graduated in the same year. The values he has are the values I have, and we've become friends. He asked me if I'd come down. I said, for a guy as good as you, a guy who truly believes in the things that make America special, that make us the greatest nation in history, who wants to do those things that are going to help families, that are consistent with the principles in our Constitution. And I said, I'm more than happy to come down and hang out with you, and if I can be helpful and say a few things about you in this breakfast this morning, it's an honor to do so, because Dave Bratt's the kind of guy you want in Congress, the kind of guy who's fighting for the things that matter, and the kind of guy I'm proud to call friend.
Well, you must be a great draw, because we understand that that all of the seating is sold out. So thanks for being there, and
more to do with Dave than it is me, I'm sure of that. But thank you for having me on, John, and you have a great day.
All right, sir. Thank you so much.